The president visits Capitol Hill.
We're going to have a real winner. It was a great meeting.
Donald Trump reaches out to lawmakers to rally support for the Republican health care plan. Gorsuch confirmation.
There's no such thing as a Republican judge or a Democratic judge. We just have judges.
The Supreme Court nominee is grilled for hours on everything from gun rights to abortion. Electronics ban. Unspecified threats force the federal government to take action on some U.S.-bound flights. And protesting the mafia. Thousands march against organized crime in Italy on a national day of remembrance. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, March 21st, 2017. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you for joining us for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Wyatt Goolsby in for Lauren Ashburn. President Trump emerges from Capitol Hill confident House Republicans will be able to pass the GOP health care bill. The president made his pitch today behind closed doors to rank-and-file Republicans 2 days ahead of a critical vote.
We're going to have a real winner. It was a great meeting.
President Trump, deal-maker-in-chief, issues a warning to House Republicans. They could lose their seats in next year's midterm elections if they don't back the GOP health care overhaul. Representative Tom MacArthur of New Jersey is on board. He says the president has made valuable concessions, including more benefits for older and disabled Medicaid beneficiaries.
We've now added $150 billion of help to people, and in the last week. And for me, that's enough to move from a likely no to a yes.
But Representative Walter Jones of North Carolina says he's not convinced and will still vote no. The GOP bill would dismantle Obama's requirements that most people buy policies. Federal subsidies based on income would end, and a Medicaid expansion would disappear. House Speaker Paul Ryan says the president laid it on the line for the GOP.
We made a promise. Now is our time to keep that promise. And we keep our promise, and the people will reward us. If we don't keep our promise, it will be very hard to manage this.
House Majority Whip Steve Scalise calls the bill revolutionary.
National right to life is scoring a yes because it's probably the most pro-life bill that will get to a president's desk for their signature since partial birth abortion.
And if Republicans can get a health care law passed, that would clear the way for Congress to tackle other priorities.
This is just the beginning of a larger agenda so we can get to tax reform and to other things that we need here in America.
President Trump will continue to court House Republicans this evening at the White House. Representative MacArthur and a group of moderate Republicans will be in attendance. Joining us now is Republican Representative Diane Black of Tennessee. Congressman Black, do you think President Trump was able to win any more votes today?
I sure hope so. I can tell you that he's a cheerleader for this legislation because he sees and hears as he travels all throughout the country that this current situation that we're in is really hurting people and they need to be rescued. So we're looking forward to a positive vote on Thursday.
Vice President Pence has also been making a big pitch to support the health care plan, particularly to pro-life leaders. He met with members of the pro-life caucus last night. He's met with pro-life activists. How important has the vice president been in this whole process?
The vice president, of course, carries much weight here with his past history of being here in the legislature, where he has a lot of friends that he worked with while he was here and great respect from the members of Congress. And so I think his voice is most helpful.
You are you're the chairman of the House Budget Committee, and you successfully got this plan through your committee. Are you expecting it to pass the full House?
I certainly hope so. We are doing our work with listening to people. We listen to our members that have concerns, and we address those concerns. And this is a process. You know, we're in regular order. We haven't seen regular order here on the Hill for quite some time. And so we're in regular order where it's going through committees, and each step of the way it gets made better by people's suggestions.
You know, Congressman Black, there's a perception that Republicans are divided over the health care bill. Is that true?
I think what you will hear from members is dependent upon geographically where they're from, whether their state was an expansion state or not. You'll hear concerns where they're just reflecting their own state. And that doesn't mean that at the end of the day we're not going to come together for the best of the American people to give them a system that is a fairer system where they can actually afford their insurance and they can pick and choose which one best suits their needs and what they're capable of paying for. But they are reflecting their own district, which is what people send them here to Congress to do. And the good thing is that our leadership is open to those suggestions and those changes.
Pro-life advocates successfully changed the language in the House health plan that ensures health care tax credits cannot be used for plans that cover abortions. Do you think that provision could make it through the Senate?
I think that it can. I've been talking to my Senate colleagues, and I think that we have the necessary support there for that. And I'm looking forward to having a positive vote here in the House and passing it over for the Senate to do the same thing.
Okay, well, all eyes are there on the House. Representative Diane Black of Tennessee, thanks so much for talking with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Supreme Court nominee Neil Gorsuch says he keeps an open mind when issuing rulings, and he bats away Democrats' efforts to get him to reveal his views on abortion, guns, and other controversial issues. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi is in our skybox above the hearing room where Judge Gorsuch has been fielding questions all day. Jason?
Why, Judge Gorsuch says when President Trump interviewed him for this job, he didn't ask him if he would overturn the Roe v. Wade decision, that landmark abortion legalizing decision. The judge says if that would have happened, he would have walked right out the door. But tonight, continuing that probe, are the Democrats behind me.
Neil Gorsuch, facing a long day of questioning, insists he's a fair and neutral judge.
My personal views, I'd also tell you, Mr. Chairman, belong over here. I leave those at home.
But Democrats aren't ready to give Gorsuch a rubber stamp.
Do you view Roe as having super precedent?
It has been reaffirmed many times. I can say that.
Gorsuch hasn't ruled in a case involving abortion, but in a book he wrote about assisted suicide, he says the intentional taking of human life is always wrong. Today, the judge was questioned about his ruling in favor of Hobby Lobby and the Little Sisters of the Poor in their fight against the Obama administration's contraceptive mandate.
Every judge who faced that case, everyone, found it a hard case and did their level best. And that's all any judge can promise or guarantee.
Gorsuch wouldn't weigh in on President Trump's immigration ban, but he did clearly endorse religious freedom.
I will apply the law faithfully and fearlessly and without regard to persons.
How about
I don't care.
Regard to religion?
Anyone, any law, is going to get a fair and square deal with me.
All day, Gorsuch has been unwilling to give his opinion on cases. He says he'll follow the facts of the case. He says he also doesn't want to prejudge any cases that may come before him. Wyatt?
Jason, what are the chances he'll be confirmed as a Supreme Court justice?
Well, all of the Republicans in the Senate are united in supporting Gorsuch, but they're going to need 8 Democrats to get Gorsuch confirmed as a Supreme Court justice. The final vote, the full vote in the Senate, is scheduled before their Easter break, which is April 7th.
Correspondent Jason Calvi reporting from Capitol Hill. Thanks, Jason. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. A new U.S. security measure bans many electronic devices on flights from 10 airports in the Middle East and Africa. Passengers on those flights are no longer allowed to bring laptops, iPads, cameras, and other electronics larger than a cell phone on board. The rule is effective immediately and will last until at least October. A U.S. official says the ban is believed to be related to al-Qaeda following a recent raid in Yemen. Britain has joined the U.S., banning laptops from flights to the U.K. from 6 countries. A Kremlin spokesman calls the U.S. House Intelligence Committee confused after hearing FBI Director James Comey testify on an investigation into Russian ties with President Trump. The spokesman says the committee can't find proof. Comey confirmed yesterday the existence of an ongoing counterintelligence probe into links between advisors to Trump and Russian officials. A dramatic scene in Peru as crews rescue families from flooding. A helicopter flies close to the water, lifting men, women, and children to safety. Severe flooding and mudslides have killed at least 72 people. Peru isn't getting a break. The rain could last 2 more weeks. Tomorrow marks 1 year since the suicide bombings at the Brussels airport and subway killed 32 people and hurt more than 300. The attacks during the morning rush hour tore families apart. Hundreds of people now consider themselves victims. They are all dealing with loss and grief in different ways.
And I think that more and more today, people feed off fear. And so I try to every day show that, I don't have fear. I can be scared, I can be realistic of danger, but I try not to focus on fear.
All of the suspects in the attacks were linked to ISIS. They were either killed in the bombings or arrested in raids following the attack. Martin McGuinness, the former Irish Republican Army commander who later became a peacemaker in Northern Ireland, has died. McGuinness was a key figure in the landmark Good Friday Agreement between Protestant and Catholic political leaders in 1998. Britain's former Prime Minister Tony Blair says the peace process in Northern Ireland wouldn't have been possible without the courage displayed by McGuinness.
The same fierceness that he brought to the armed struggle, he then brought to the cause of peace, and he was determined to give Northern Ireland a different future from the past that he had grown up in.
IRA bombing victims have a different view of McGuinness, saying they can't forgive him for the role in the attacks. McGuinness was 66 years old. The European Union will hold a special meeting April 29th to draw up guidelines on Brexit. Britain is expected to trigger its exit from the EU next week. Then the other 27 nations will come up with the best way to make the split. Britain's voted in June to leave the EU after more than 40 years of membership. Thousands march against the mafia in Italy today. Since 1995, the Libera Association has held a national day of remembrance each year on March 21st to commemorate the lives lost, comfort families of the victims, and work to find a nonviolent way to fight the mafia. This year, the Italian government made it into a national day of remembrance. Vatican correspondent Mary Shovlin joins us from Rome now. Mary, how widespread are the demonstrations and why are people so upset?
Wide, we know in the Calabrian town of Locri, which is the stronghold of the Negretta crime family, the demonstrations there, that's really the hub, is about 25,000 people, and they've been happening throughout the day. And then throughout the country, another 500,000 Italians are taking to the streets, not only to protest mafia activity, which of course involves blackmail, drug trafficking, infiltration of politics at times, influencing elections around the country. So the outrage is real. Many of their loved ones have been lost, and that's what this day is really about, the innocent victims of organized crime. People are caught in the crosshairs. So again, demonstrations taking place all over the country, and what's great about these demonstrations, Wyatt, is that they march peacefully and they read the names of each of the lives that have been lost because of mafia violence.
Are public officials like the President of Italy and Pope Francis weighing in?
Definitely. Many people don't know this, but the president of Italy's own brother lost his life because of mafia violence. He was the governor of Sicily in 1980. So President Mattarella of Italy went in person to these anti-mafia meetings over the weekend to voice his support, to comfort many of the family victims who were there, because he really can identify with their pain. He called the mafia cowardly. The Italian president also said we need to drain the swamp where these mafia organizations are able to prosper. Pope Francis sent a message as well through the Secretary General of the Italian Bishops' Conference and encouraged everyone to work for a more civil and just society and to keep these mobsters, these gangsters, from carrying out their activity as best they can. So both the president and the Pope putting their full weight behind today's day of remembrance.
Mary, I also understand that the church itself is putting its foot down against the mafia. What else has the church said about it?
Well, it's interesting, Wyatt. We know that Don Ciotti, a priest himself, started this Day of Remembrance 20 years ago. There's headlines now and then throughout the years where you see a priest or an archbishop or cardinal putting their foot down, even the Pope, from John Paul even to Francis, speaking out boldly against the mafia. In fact, there was a headline just last week where an archbishop put his foot down in his diocese and says, if somebody is known to be a part of organized crime in any way, these godfathers cannot be godfathers in baptism, of course, and they cannot be your confirmation sponsor either. So the church is also helping political efforts here in Italy to crack down on all levels.
Godfathers should not be godfathers. This makes for an interesting headline, at least. Mary Shovlin, our EWTN News Nightly Vatican correspondent. Thanks for talking with us, Mary.
Thank you, Wyatt.
Coming up, President Trump's Supreme Court pick. We'll take a look at how Neil Gorsuch compares to Antonin Scalia, the conservative justice he would replace. And some ancient artifacts take us back to Jesus' time on Earth.
Per avere il perdono dei peccati ci confessiamo.
Pope Francis urges Catholics to treat the confessional more seriously. Speaking at his daily Mass, the Holy Father added, Christians need to be truly ashamed of their sins. He ended his homily by asking the congregation to forgive others. Welcome back. I'm Wyatt Goolsby in for Lauren Ashburn. Supreme Court nominee Neil Gorsuch refused to comment on President Obama's original replacement for Justice Antonin Scalia, Merrick Garland.
He's an outstanding judge.
Do you think he was treated fairly by this committee, yes or no?
Senators, I explained to you before, I can't get involved in politics.
Democratic Senator Patrick Leahy asked Gorsuch about Garland. The Supreme Court nominee added it would be unwise for judges to comment on political disputes. For more analysis on Judge Gorsuch hearings, we're joined by Carrie Severino, Chief Counsel and Policy Director for the Judicial Crisis Network. Carrie, do Democrats really believe Gorsuch is not a great pick, or are their objections really partisan?
Well, I think he's the kind of person that under different political circumstances would have gotten a unanimous vote, just like Justice Scalia did. But in this year, when everyone is so frustrated about the election, you've got Democrats that are really using this confirmation hearing to lay the groundwork for gridlock. They want any excuse to just block everything President Trump does. And so you're seeing them being very aggressive today, trying to catch him not answering questions that frankly, they know he's not ethically allowed to answer, asking him, well, basically, would you overrule Roe versus Wade? He can't comment on that. Would you do with Citizens United? He can't comment on that. They're trying to just make him look like he's not answering when, in fact, these are the same questions no Supreme Court justice has answered, for decades.
You mentioned Antonin Scalia. Gorsuch is filling the seat vacated by Antonin Scalia, and he's talked about his admiration for Scalia. Heck, the president said he wants someone in the same mold as Scalia. What are the chances Gorsuch may not follow in the footsteps of Justice Scalia?
Well, look, you've got someone on the court for a life term. You never know exactly what they will do. That said, he was chosen, obviously, with Justice Scalia's legacy in mind, and so he has someone who has applied in 10 years so far on the bench those same kind of principles. I think that's good evidence. Plus, he has a record of standing up courageously in cases that you knew you were going to get political pressure on. And he said earlier today that it doesn't matter when you're getting political pressure. That should not have any factor in a judge's decision. And I think that's the kind of thing that gives people added confidence. This isn't someone who's going to sway with, the media is talking a lot about a case, and maybe I don't want to rule the way I think is legally compelled. He's someone who seems like he's going to stick to his guns and has the courage to stand by his principles.
Well, noting that, how do you see Gorsuch fitting into the Supreme Court? How do you see alliances shifting, if you will?
Well, he's known on the 10th Circuit as being very collegial. I think he has the highest record of unanimity and agreement with other justices of any of the judges on that circuit. He has upwards of 97% of the cases he's sat on have been unanimously cited. That's remarkable. So, as he said earlier today, maybe that's because he's collegial, maybe it's because he's very compelling. So I would hope that he can make compelling arguments to the other members of the Supreme Court and convince them of how great his originalist approach is to the law and a textual approach to statutory interpretation. We also know that he has a good relationship with Justice Kennedy, who he clerked for many years ago now. So I think that will help to ease his transition into the court and get to know all of the other justices even better.
Carrie Severino, Chief Counsel and Policy Director for the Judicial Crisis Network. Carrie, thanks so much for your insight.
Thanks for having me.
Archaeologists show off artifacts that may help historians understand how Jesus lived and died. Israel has opened up its vast storeroom for a peek at material from the time of Christ. It's one of the most excavated places on the planet. Hundreds of digs take place every year in the country, and about 40,000 items are dug up each year.
Today we can reconstruct very accurately many aspects on the daily life of the time of Christ. We could follow the steps of Christ by archaeological finds.
Professor Avni says experts have yet to find direct archaeological evidence of Jesus Christ, but there is no reason to believe he did not exist. Up next, it's World Down Syndrome Day around the globe.
What we really need is education, jobs, and opportunities, friends, and some love.
We celebrate the lives of people with Down syndrome. And Pope Francis sends out a message ahead of World Youth Day.
Son muy importantes para mí estos momentos de encuentro, diálogo con ustedes.
The Holy Father sends his best wishes to young people taking part in the World Youth Day this year. The Pope says the world doesn't need young people who are couch potatoes and added Mary was not one. World Youth Day takes place at the local level in the years between the international gathering, which takes place every 3 years. The next one is in Panama in 2019. Welcome back. I'm Wyatt Goolsby in for Lauren Ashburn. An advocacy group takes a humorous approach to the phrase special needs. They released a new video ahead of today's World Down Syndrome Day.
Special needs? Really? It would be special if people with Down syndrome needed to eat dinosaur eggs. That would be special.
One dinosaur egg. Enjoy.
The video goes on to say what people with Down syndrome really need: education, jobs, and opportunities. Join us now is Troy Remick, an advisory board member with Down Syndrome Diagnostic Network, a support and advocacy group with parents and children with Down syndrome. And of course, join her is her 5-year-old son, Tobin. Hey, Tobin. Excited to be here. Troy, you're a mom of 5, and your son, Tobin, of course, has Down syndrome. How has Tobin changed your family and your life?
Oh, he's definitely brought a dimension to our family that we didn't even know was missing. Just a unfiltered love and acceptance of people.
You know, this video makes the point that people with Down syndrome don't have special needs. They have the same needs as everybody else. What are sort of the misconceptions about living with Down syndrome?
I think initially fear of the unknown, because it is something new, to, especially to our family, but also just not understanding that they really are more alike than different. And so he's very much like any of my other children, and we just treat him as such.
Well, you started with the Down Syndrome Diagnostic Network with other parents. What advice do you have for families who are parenting a child with Down syndrome?
Well, we really focus on the 0 to 3 age range because we're dealing with parents with new diagnoses.
Mm-hmm.
So we oftentimes just let them know that we're here to walk the journey with them so that they don't feel like they're alone in that new diagnosis.
And Tobin, you know, we have a picture that we want to show you here of your brothers and sisters. I hear you really love them. Can you, Tobin, can you say those names of each of your siblings?
Who's that?
Can you see if you speak those out loud? Tell them, Tobin.
Zoe, yes. Who else? Karsten, who else? Who do you see? Hi. You're saying hi to them? That's Keegan and Bergen. Bergen? Yeah, that's your brothers and sister. You see them.
It's a great picture. Tobin, do you mind waving here? Wave to camera 2.
Can you wave over there?
Wave to camera 2 there.
Hi.
Anything else, Troy, that you want people to know?
Just that, you know, really and truly, individuals with Down syndrome are like any other individuals. We all have our own unique preferences and needs, and so really just to treat them as you would anyone else. They're God's children.
Absolutely. We are all God's children. And it's nice to have both of you here on set. And it looks like Tobin's getting more and more used to the cameras and lights and everything. Can you wave one more time, Tobin?
Say bye-bye.
Troy and Tobin Remick, thanks so much for y'all for being here.
Thank
we appreciate it.
I appreciate it, Wyatt.
And we thank you for watching our newscast tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Wyatt Goolsby. We leave you tonight with a look at the famous cherry blossoms in our nation's capital. Despite a recent cold spell, about half of the blossoms survive and will likely emerge over the next week around the tidal basin. The park promises a brilliant display of white and pink blooms. Good night and God bless.